Dave Rubin, welcome to the Femsplainers.
It is so nice to be with you, ladies. I have been doing press all day. This is the last one of the day, and I am energized. I have a glass of red wine, as was requested. Well, a cocktail, I suppose, was requested.
Suggested.
So, was it not requested? It was suggested. Is that it?
Well, we don't want to force anyone to drink, but you know.
Oh, my people said you force people to drink.
So, we do. Who wouldn't drink during a pandemic?
Wait a minute, Christina, are you drinking red wine?
Yes.
I thought you, every time I've ever been out with you, I always think of you as a classy white wine woman.
I know, I ran out.
Oh.
And so I'm going to the Merlot and this and that, but I'm going to go shopping.
Anything. Like she has drunk on the podcast Harvey's Bristol Cream.
I love it.
That ain't pretty. What about you, Danielle? What are you drinking?
I'm embarrassed because we're doing this later on our end because we're on the East Coast than I normally do. And I'm so old that I've poured myself hot milk.
Oh my God.
Oh,
Buzzkill.
It's like, it's once this far away from Ovaltine. That's when I hit the retirement of. But anyway, well, welcome.
Thanks.
Dave.
Well, we're very excited about your book, and I read it this week, and it's a whole story of an odyssey. And just begin at the beginning. Like, how did you become a talk show host in the first place? Tell us a little about your background.
Yeah, well, it's all very strange, I suppose, because even just, talking to you for here, Christina, it's like you've only been on my show bizarrely once in all of these years, and it feels like many lifetimes ago already. But where did it all start? Well, I was born in Brooklyn in 1976, before Brooklyn was cool. So before it was hipster Brooklyn, when it was just Brooklyn.
Where in Brooklyn?
Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. I was born in Brookdale Hospital, lived in Brooklyn for a couple of years. And then my parents sort of accomplished the American dream of getting out of the big city. And we moved to the suburbs in Long Island. And I grew up middle class in Long Island. I had a pretty functioning, decent childhood. My parents are still married 48 some odd years later, which is a sort of hint to my mom's age. But every time I say my mom's age on one of these shows, I get a very intense text or call after. So I'm not going to say that. And then from Long Island, I went to SUNY Binghamton, so State University of New York at Binghamton, where I was a poli-sci major, and then got out of college. And it wasn't until I got out of college that I kind of realized I was going to need a job. And I thought, I guess I'll be a comedian. My friends were all kind of funny, and it thought somebody would be a comedian, and I just decided to do it. And I did stand-up for 12 years in New York with all the ups and downs of that, the struggles and the successes.
That is so hard.
The drugs and the drinking and the joy and the misery and all that, standing out on street corners 2 hours a night, often 6 nights a week, handing out tickets in Times Square just so that you maybe get 8 people to show up at the show so you can try one new joke. I lived that life. And then eventually I got a show on Sirius XM for a little while on the Out Q channel, because at that point I had come out. I had told people that I was gay. And what do you do with a gay person? You put them on the gay channel, like a separate but equal channel. I really wanted to be on one of the political.
Dave, it's like being a woman.
Yeah, right. Well, I'm sure I don't know if they have it anymore. They actually don't have the Out Q channel anymore. I don't know if they have like a woman-focused channel anymore.
It's called The View.
It's called The View, exactly.
Hallmark TV.
I do, the Golden Girls is on Hallmark, and I do love the Golden Girls. So I end up watching a lot of these Candace Cameron Bure movies on Hallmark. They're not terrible.
That's kind of gay, Dave.
I pick my spots, Christina. A lot of people say that I don't seem gay or I don't act gay or something. It's like I've been literally with my husband for 10 years. We've been married for 5 years. If that's not gay, I know that what they mean is they want me to have, taffeta or, I should have a rainbow flag or something.
What is that? There is a parody of gays. There's just a certain kind of flamboyant gay, like, what was his name? The exercise guru?
Oh, like a Richard Simmons.
Simmons. But that's just one style. It's not, there are handsome, rugged guys like you.
Yeah. Well, you know what it is? It's the outwardly gay, expressive, flamboyant, whatever you want to call it. You can identify those people very easily as gay, and often I think they play it up for probably a series of different reasons.
Because it's fabulous.
I guess, but I was never really into any of that stuff. I never felt very different than any of my friends. I played video games. I played sports with everybody. And then there was this like one secret sort of that I had along the road of it. And it kind of screwed me up, I would say, in years. And I talk about it a little bit in the book because I felt that there was something wrong with me because I didn't think, I thought gay meant sort of like you like the theater or you like to dance or something like that. And I didn't really like that. And I liked what I thought normal guys like, except that I happen to like guys. And that really did sort of trip me along the way. And it's kind of funny in retrospect because, you know, so many gay people or gay men put an emphasis on being masculine. That's thought of as some like incredible thing. And I suppose if that's what I am, I mean, this is just what I am, but I thought it was a flaw in me. I would see these fabulous gay guys and I would be like, oh, they really are just being themselves. But here I am, just me, like something was kind of broken.
Ready? I just have one question. Were there a lot of girls in your high school who had crush on you and then you just broke their hearts because you were indifferent and they just thought they weren't good enough for you and you were gay and you didn't tell them because you didn't know?
Yeah, well, first off, I wasn't out in high school. I wasn't out in college. I wasn't out really until my mid-20s, which, you know, I don't really have regrets in life because I think the mistakes you make along the way, actually, if you become the person you're supposed to be, it is the magic that leads to it, even if you don't know it at the time. But believe it or not only did I date girls throughout that, but my senior prom was the night of the O.J. Simpson car chase, and it was also the first time I ever had sex with a girl. The night of the O.J. Simpson car chase. So everyone on earth knows where they were the night that I first had sex with a girl. And it clearly did some damage to me and A.J. Cowlings. But after basically college, did stand up, eventually got a show on Sirius XM. And then from that ended up at the Young Turks, which is a lefty progressive network. And then that's sort of where I had my political awakening because I always thought of myself as a lefty and a liberal. But that's where I really got involved in the progressive side of things, which was sort of liberalism on steroids, and everyone was angry all the time and screaming all the time, and everyone that opposed them was a bigot and a racist and a homophobe and all that stuff that you guys know. And from being around that, I think what has sort of put me on the map is that I was a very early adopter of seeing that something was really wrong with the left. That leftism really had nothing to do with true liberalism. Christina and I have talked about this many times. And because I started talking about that 5 years ago from, say, a lefty perspective, and saying, hey, guys, we're all on the same team here, but we need to stop destroying each other. We need to stop the outrage machine, the mobs, and we need to stop pretending that everyone who opposes us is the worst thing in the world and a Nazi and all that. I was one of just the first people that sort of caught that message or that was talking about it. And I think that really then subsequently led to really a 5-year political evolution that gets me to today. And even today, I would say I'm still evolving. I think evolving and figuring out what you believe, I think that's your job and duty as a human being. And unfortunately, we live in a time where everyone's just afraid to say, I don't know, or afraid to admit that they don't know everything about the Iran nuclear deal or everything about what's going on with North Korea or how to solve coronavirus. And then we all just end up pretending to know everything and fighting about it all day. And I've tried to add a little sanity to that mix.
And also sometimes changing your mind, which I do. And I have different, I mean, it might be partly as many years teaching philosophy where you can sort of understand both sides and you have a preference. But the students would always say, well, what do you think? What's the answer? And on some issues, the answer is actually in the struggle between different points of view. That's where the truth can emerge. That's the philosophical tradition. And your show, you started to bring a lot of people on. Danielle, you have a question?
Yeah, no, I was going to say, David, you compared your political evolution to sort of coming out of the closet. And you have, I was very moved by, at the beginning of the book, you talk about, you sort of breezed through it now in this interview, but that was clearly a huge deal for you, that living in the closet, as you say, till your mid-20s, you went into depression, you had problems with alcohol, you said you became a pothead. It's a thing of self-loathing. Tell us, I think this is a side of you that we always think of you as, with politics, but you've really gone through something. And then the night, of course, that you came out, the next morning, 9/11 happened. So
yeah, literally.
O.J. Simpson and sex. I don't know what it is with you in personal. landmark, but
Warn us the next time you're going to do anything dramatic.
Yeah, just warn us, please. What did you do before the country got shut down?
You don't want to know what I did right the night before Hurricane Katrina. I don't even want to get into it. But yes, it's funny. It's interesting, Danielle, the way you preface that, because I did sort of breeze through it because everyone sort of has this. You have times in life where, you're not the person you want to be, and even times in life where you eventually become that person and then you fall into old habits or whatever it might be. And I find when you're living your life, right, time sort of goes by faster because you're just doing it. You're not thinking about it. And when you're closeted, and I do compare being closeted sexually to being closeted politically, which I think a lot of people are politically closeted right now. It's very hard living one life. To just live one life is pretty difficult, right? We all try to do the best we can, but that's pretty difficult. But when you're closeted, whether it's because of your sexuality, your political beliefs, or any other set of beliefs, when you're not sharing who you really are to the world, you're living more than one life. And you will lie accidentally. You will get yourself into situations, not even intentionally, that, so to your earlier point, like, was I lying to girls? I would still try to date girls because I thought I could kind of fix this wrong thing in me. And I've had to, over the years, apologize. I've reached out to girls that I hadn't spoke to in 10 years to just say, hey, I hope you're happy, and I'm sorry that I did that. And, it's part of my own sort of healing thing. But yes, Danielle, I literally was closeted until 12:30 a.m. on September 11th, 2001. And I told the first guy that I ever told what I thought was this horrific secret. My friend Mike Singer, who is a comedian, and we were at the Times Square subway station. I'm sure you guys have been in this exact spot. We were standing right in front of the shuttle train, which all it does is go from Times Square to Grand Central and back. We were standing right there. I told him, and I thought I had released this like horrific secret into the world or something like that. He didn't realize that he was the first person, and he was just like, "Oh, it's okay, it's all good. I'll see you tomorrow." and then I woke up the next morning, and America was under attack. And truly, it set me back. It was like I had released this thing into the world, and what happened? The entire
God was punishing you.
Yeah, the city that I lived in was literally being destroyed, and that did some serious psychological damage. And I try to paint that.
Now you blame the Muslims, Dave. You blame the Muslims.
And now I blame the Muslims, naturally. I'm sure somebody thinks that somehow. But that sort of idea that you can be closeted about your political beliefs too, I think, is actually where a lot of people find themselves these days, because there's a lot of good people out there who aren't purely Democrats or purely Republicans, as if those should be the only choices we have. But that, maybe you're for gay marriage, but you're also for low taxes. That makes perfect sense to me, actually. Maybe you are for gun rights and you're pro-choice. That one's a little stranger relative to our normal political conversation. But you can pick and choose these things. And what I tried to lay out in this book is you don't have to say you're a Democrat or believe everything the Democrats believe. You don't have to say you're a Republican or believe everything Republicans believe. I believe the best lens that there is to view the world is through the classical liberal lens. I think that's the most flexible lens to sort of create a society that will be flourishing and allow the most people to live how they want to live.
Now, tell us a little bit about how you met Jordan Peterson. And did you spend a year or a year and a half on tour with him?
Yeah, I spent a year and a half with that guy, with that Kermit the Frog sounding professor from Canada. It's pretty funny, actually.
Canadian. You watch what you say about us.
That was pretty good. Oh, right. You are a Canadian. Yeah. Well, it's interesting because it's very much, Christina, how I met you, which is that when I started doing the Rubin Report that you guys know, the interview show, that was in September of 2015. And Christina, you were on pretty early on, within the first few months.
Yeah, I remember. I didn't know who you were. I'd been on Joe Rogan for 3 hours. And then but I had a couple of days in LA, and someone said, well, you're going to go to Dave Rubin. And I don't know, we went to, it looks like some apartment in where you lived, West Hollywood. And there you were. And we bonded immediately. I remember the whole thing. It was.
Yeah, we hit it off just like that. I think the one thing that you requested was that you wanted a nice glass of Chardonnay right before we started, and they gave you a glass of Chardonnay, and we immediately hit it off. Yeah. But the way I got in touch with you really was, and this is how I can get this to the Jordan part, is that as I started the show and I sort of found these other moderates, these other, what I thought were basically sort of good liberals that were frustrated by the same things I was frustrated by identity politics, frustrated by what was becoming this hysterical nature of the left. I started talking about it, and then people started tweeting at me, oh, you've got to talk to Christina Hoff Sommers. You've got to
Sam
talk to
Harris.
Sam Harris. So Sam was the first guest that I had on. Sam was on September 9th, 2015. And Sam, and then Douglas Murray, and Ayaan Hirsi Ali, and a series of these people. And anyway, flash forward about 2 years, or flash forward about 2 years. And suddenly on Twitter, I'm seeing all these people talk about this guy, Jordan Peterson. And I watch 1 or 2 of his videos, and he's talking really fast, and he's very expressive with his hands.
Pacing back and forth in front of the
He's
classroom.
pacing, and sometimes he's on the verge of crying and all of this stuff. And I'm trying to figure out, what is this thing? And I had just moved into this house, which, as you guys know, I'm in my garage right now. This is my home studio.
Like the world's garage.
It's a pretty cool garage. I know. I did
With like
this
marble walls? No, I guess they're cement, but they're fancy cement. Anyway, go on.
It's faux. Faux wood. Those are fake walls, believe it or not. I don't want to blow the illusion for everybody.
Don't blow the illusion.
All right, we'll pretend that didn't happen. But it was right when our set was being built. Definitely, you got to edit that out. Our set was being built. And I had to do a show on Skype with somebody on Google Hangouts or something. And I talked to Jordan. Our internet connection was terrible. And we have this hour-long conversation, and he's talking about postmodernism, and he's talking about all the things that he talks about. And at the end, he tells this story that he's repeated several times about Pinocchio and finding the star and all of these things. And he's crying at the end. And we click end, and I turn to David, who's my husband and my producer, and I said, that guy is either the most genius person I've ever talked to or completely insane. And over the next year, I had him on the show several times. 12 Rules for Life came out. I had interviews with him and Ben Shapiro and a couple other people. And then one day, I had him and Shapiro in here, and Jordan was doing his first test show at the Orpheum downtown in LA. It was going to be his first theater show. And it's hard to remember that he wasn't always this star. So he was just this professor.
And it happened so quickly. I mean, he really was one of those spent 30 years becoming an overnight sensation. But
yeah,
it's exactly that thing. And that I see a lot of that with my comic friends when they're like, oh, you became an overnight sensation. It's like, yeah, well, you forgot that 2 decades of all the crap I had to do before.
Passing out tickets in Times Square.
Yeah, exactly. But as he was walking out of my studio, I knew he had the show that night. And really as a joke, I said to him, hey, Jordan, if you want me to come tonight, I'll warm up the crowd. I'll tell some lobster jokes and we'll see what happened. And he immediately said yes. And we went, and this, it was sold out. It was about 3,000 seats. And the guy announces, now the host of the Rubin Report, Dave Rubin. The crowd went crazy. I could not believe that these people knew me. And I did about 10 minutes of stand-up, basically, just welcoming everybody there. And the agents were there, and they immediately were like, Jordan's about to go on tour. You're opening for him. We want to sign with you. And then over the course of a year and a half, we did about 120 shows together in about 20 countries. And it was like the honor of my professional life, because to see this guy, like, this isn't like touring with a comedian or being around a regular celebrity. This guy literally was turning people's lives around. Every city we went to in every country, whether it was Stockholm or Oslo or Melbourne or Toronto, like people that had stopped drinking, people that had reconnected with their parents, people that had found a job after being unemployed for years, people that had come to terms with their sexuality. I mean, the litany of things that he genuinely changed the world with his words.
And so many young men. He attracted all sorts of fans. And we were saying in the past, hopefully he will be healthy and back, but he attracted so many young men who were desperate for serious conversation. And people thought, oh, well, it's just right-wing, it wasn't right-wing, it wasn't political, it was existential, it was spiritual, it was eschatology. I mean, he'd go off and make it exciting and dangerous and dramatic because it is for him.
Well, let me ask you, can I ask you about that, Dave, to elaborate?
Yeah.
Because it's fascinating. We've seen this kind of intellectual rock star. That's like a new phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And it came, I guess it came sort of, and you correct me on this, you were at the sort of forefront of this. I don't know what to call it, like podcast, online.
YouTube. He's a YouTube star.
Yeah, it all works. Any of those words work for me.
And then it grew. And then, yes, I saw Sam Harris when he came to Washington, and an entire theater, just thousands of people had come out, and it was incredible. It was the first time I had seen something like that. Can you describe what happened and sort of from your point of view, how did this evolve aside from what they were preaching, this whole phenomenon really?
Yeah. I mean, the true truth of it is, I don't think any of us, whether you include Christina and Sam Harris and Jordan Peterson and whoever you want to throw, all of these people, whoever you want to throw into the mix, whoever it is, I don't think any of us knew exactly what was happening as it was happening. We kind of all were, that's the cool thing. I mean, that's the exciting part about life, I think, is that if you start doing what you think is right and it's good, that other people start doing things that are good too. And then you're suddenly attracted to people doing good things. And it was as if we were piecing together a puzzle without realizing that there was a puzzle to be put together. And then suddenly when Sam is doing these theater events, and Sam and Jordan did a couple theater events where they basically debated the nature of reality. And they did, even in London, they did one. And it's like, you're here to watch a neuroscientist and a psychologist debate the nature of reality, and 5,000 people show up for that. And I think there is a reason for it that maybe we didn't fully realize, that I now realize a little bit more, and I write a little bit about in the book, which is that the mainstream media has treated us like such children for so long, and done what I would say is such a duplicitous job. And unfortunately, every time I say journalists on Twitter, I have to use air quotes, because so many of them are activists, not journalists, and they go for clickbait, and can we destroy people, and can we lie about people, that suddenly this odd eclectic mix of biologists and economists and comedians, Joe Rogan, like this weird collection of people that really were just trying to be like, what the hell's going on here? And suddenly all these other people wanted it. I just want to say one other thing about the Jordan shows, which, because Christina, you mentioned that it was mostly young men, which is true, that the audiences, I would say, usually skewed. It was about 60-40 male to female. And in every hit piece, especially the one in the New York Times when they said Jordan was for enforced monogamy, as if he was trying to get women in The Handmaid's Tale, but all he meant was that marriage is good, which most of us do believe. And they would say it's all angry young men who are there at his shows. Now, first off, not only wasn't it true, I always would say to him, it's crazy to say that, because if it is all angry young men, then perhaps young men have a problem and you're addressing the problem. So if they are angry young men and they come out less angry, then that would be good. But the media just seems unable to deal with real issues. They take some cartoon caricature of people that they don't like, and it's usually right-leaning people, right? If you're on the left, you get every benefit of the doubt, or they'll bury the story. And if you're on the right, they take a cartoon version of you and they just run with that. So all of this led for me to be able to put together something in the world that I think makes some sense to people.
Now, tell the story about how over the course of the tour, he certainly influenced you, but you influenced him a little bit, because he had a very engaging style, but he didn't have a lot of jokes.
Yeah.
Right? So you did what? You tried to help him be funnier. Did it work?
Yeah. All right. Let me go into more funny mode here. I'm giving you guys more serious political, Dave. We'll go into more relaxed, Dave. So it was interesting. What we would do is, often we would have a day or two in between shows. And if we got to a town early, I would do a comedy club. And fortunately, even though I don't do that much stand-up anymore, I can sell out a club pretty easily with my name. And I would just get up there and I'd mess around with the crowd. I'd give out T-shirts, and I'm like a 3-ring circus. I just have fun, and everyone comes and enjoy themselves. I don't think about it that much, and it's fun. That's all it is. So one night, and I would bring people from the intellectual dark web, from this crew of people. I would bring them. So when I did the show in DC, I brought Miss Christina Hoff Sommers, and you absolutely rocked it. We had a drink on stage. The crowd was going bananas. They loved the fact that you were, I would always leave it as a surprise so that, people would have this bonus thing to happen when they were there. Anyway, we were in Salt Lake City, and I was at, I think it's Wisecrackers Comedy Club. And I did this show, and I was actually shocked that the audience was amazing. I mean, because you don't know, or I guess maybe I didn't know, it was ignorance. I didn't know what to make of what was going to be mostly a Mormon crowd for, you know, a gay liberal to show up.
No drinks.
And well, they actually did drink there, but not everybody drank for sure. That was actually one of the running themes throughout the night. But I do my thing for about an hour, and then I bring Jordan on stage, and the crowd goes, I mean, just beyond bananas. And virtually everyone that was there the night for me, our show was the next night. So virtually everybody had tickets already to see us the next night. And I got Jordan to go up there, and he cursed a little bit, and he was a little blue and off color. And what I noticed was there was something pretty amazing that happened, which was when I could get Jordan to laugh, and I noticed this not just in this stand-up show, but any show that I did with Jordan. If I could really get him to crack up, I could feel something in the crowd, because the stuff that Jordan's talking about getting your life together, standing up straight with your shoulders back, confronting the world as it is, not as you want it to be, really doing what you're supposed to do with your life. That's you. I mean, you've been to the shows, Christina.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of it can be kind of fire and brimstone and tough stuff to go through, right? And I would notice if I could get Jordan to laugh, it was as if the crowd, as if something just like stripped out of them, and they felt relaxed too. I could feel it. So I really made a point of trying to always push Jordan wherever I could. And what I noticed that I was so happy about was there were times where Jordan would be very funny. You know, he tells this story about rats doing cocaine, of this study that they gave rats all this cocaine and what would happen. And he would get a lot of jokes, but a lot of jokes through it, but his intention was never to be funny. And, you know, one of the things you have to do as a comic is if you get a laugh, you got to pause. You got to let the audience laugh, you know, because sometimes a laugh comes and then somebody starts laughing at that laugh, and it just, it works itself. It opens up itself. You breathe it. But Jordan, because he's not a comic, he would always run through the laugh. And the tour manager, John, and I would always say, man, this guy could be the greatest comedian in the world because he's telling the truth, but all he has to do is just work on some of the timing stuff. And what I'm proud to say is over the course of the tour, I think he did start noticing those moments a little bit more. I think he always made a point. He would say, Dave, you can say anything you want to me. You can make fun of me. You can say absolutely anything. Sometimes I would say, Jordan, I don't know, maybe we should go a little lighter tonight. Dave, whatever you want to do, whatever you want to do. And just one other thing on this. It's hard to believe, but 120 shows, he did a different show every single night. I never saw the same show twice. Sometimes he would talk about all 12 rules in the book. Sometimes he would talk about one rule. Sometimes he would talk about Twitter the whole night. I mean, it was truly like, it was like if you couldn't be affected by that thing, I don't know what kind of person I would be.
But it is, he was like an asteroid or something, because as you say, there was a part of you that said, oh my God, this is a genius, or he's crazy, and probably a bit of both. I mean, he went off on this diet of, he would only eat. He came to actually our house in Washington with Christina after the program.
He held Izzy.
He would only eat steak. Yeah. And at that point, I think he still had salt and pepper, but I understand he cut that out. He went on this steak, and he would have whiskey. That was it. Water. Yep. And then he became his wife. He's gone through it. I don't know that everybody knows that he's gone through this terrible health crisis with him ending up in Russia at some point. Have you got any update on where he is now, whether he's recovering?
Yeah. So there's a couple things. So first off, I don't want to say anything that is not public already specific.
Right. His daughter has come out and spoken about this.
Yeah. So what I will tell you is this, you know, try to imagine this guy who, again, as we said before, didn't want to be famous, didn't do this for fame, was writing a pretty dense political, sort of, not even political, I would say self-help book. Then this amazing thing happens. He becomes this worldwide phenomenon. I was with him. I think we were in Iowa. We were having lunch, and we were having steak. So he would eat a ribeye for breakfast. He would have a ribeye for lunch, and usually 2 ribeyes or a tomahawk, like a full-on Fred Flintstone
President
tomahawk.
Eisenhower did that.
like carry it on his shoulder, steak for dinner. But we were having lunch in Iowa, and he got the call that his wife, Tammy, had terminal cancer. And we were sitting at the table, and I saw him taking the call, and eventually I walked away so he could have some privacy. But he kept going. And through that, she went through all sorts of stuff. And it's very important. The one thing that I will say about this to make people really understand is he was very open about taking a small amount of Klonopin the entire time for anxiety. So it wasn't that he was secretly pill popping or something like that. He had acknowledged that he had these issues with anxiety and that he was taking something. And then I think what happened was, as Tammy's health deteriorated, he then upped it for himself. And guess what? The guy's not Jesus. He's just a man or a human like any of us. And he lost control. And sometimes you can have that reverse reaction with these benzos where it's supposed to help with anxiety, but actually doubles down on anxiety. And I will tell you that I did see him a few months ago. I bought him a brand new suit and I said, Jordan, when you're back, I want you looking good. So we had it measured out for him and the whole thing. And he will be back. He was able to, write the blurb on the cover of my book and on the back. And he'll be better than ever. But he's gone through something that is, as he would say, brutal.
It's so terrible that happened, and we wish the best, and we want him back. We want to have him back to dinner in Washington, and maybe have a salad this time. A little more balanced diet couldn't hurt. But you also went through a period of trauma. I was amazed because I didn't know that this happened to you, and I think you're sensitive, Dave. And I think all of the controversy and the call out culture on Twitter and you took a lot of fire from various sources. And tell us what happened to your health. When was
so the show started, as I said, in September of 2015 as this sort of newborn interview show where I was starting to finally really say what I think and talk about free speech and what was going on with the left. And then I had never really experienced Twitter hate or the mob or any of that. But suddenly I was getting just this endless plethora. I mean, hundreds and thousands of tweets a day saying the worst things. But it wasn't even that. It was then suddenly people that were invited to my wedding, former friends and colleagues, were turning on me publicly and saying all these horrific things about me. And I didn't realize it was affecting me until one day in the fall of 2015. So probably right around when we met, Christina. And I was getting a haircut, and my stylist, Jess, who's a good friend of mine, she called David over and she said, you should look at this. And I had these huge, I'm talking like 2/4 size holes all over the back of my head and starting on the top of my head. And I had developed something called alopecia areata, which is, it's an autoimmune disease where basically your white blood cells start attacking your hair follicles. And they don't know why, other than they chalk it up to stress. And I had lost, believe it or not, I had lost like probably 40 to 45% of my hair. Like my hairline was almost gone. I remember thinking, I write about this in the book, if I had lost like this last section right here, I was done. I was going to quit. And I went on, I was miserable also and depressed.
Didn't you think at first you had some incurable disease?
Yeah.
That must have been terrifying.
I thought I had cancer. I thought I had AIDS. I mean, you go through every horrific incarnation that you can. I mean, I thought I was dead. I thought that was it. And then what was even worse is I went on this very experimental treatment that basically it's a cream and it's like putting poison ivy on you. And the idea is that you cause an allergic reaction on your head so that your white blood cells will attack that instead of your hair follicles. But what I didn't know, even the doctor did say there could be some side effects, but I ended up having like the most beyond insane side effects. Literally every inch of my body except my face. I mean, it's a miracle. Except my face, every inch of my body was constantly broken out and red and hot and itchy. And my hair was still falling out. And you can watch videos of me, and I was bloated and I had huge bags under my eyes. That why I left the left video on PragerU that I did that went viral. That was in the middle of that thing. And it's hard for me to look at it. People don't know that. But like I was right when I was in the middle of it, and I had to spray hair on and do all kinds of crazy stuff. And eventually the cure was worse than the disease. So I stopped doing it. And since then I take biotin and I've tried to control stress. And by the way, I learned how to, it's weird because going through all the hate, you guys get it too. If it doesn't crush you, it does make you stronger. If it doesn't kill you, you will come out better on the other side. And it's like now when I get that stuff, it doesn't bother me. It's like I'm doing something good and I know it's good. And I've tried to put something good in the world. And my hair grew back. It's all my own hair.
Beautiful hair. And you to protect your psyche, you take, what are they, like Twitter Shabbat? You stop?
Yeah. Shapiro always calls it Shabbat. I always tell people I'm taking the weekend off Twitter. And he's like, yeah, we've been doing it for 5,000 years. It's called Shabbat.
Even before
Yeah, but I try to take the weekends off. I haven't been doing that well during Corona because now we live in this odd time where the weekend and the week are sort of the same thing now. So I've sort of not done it that well right now, but for the last 3 years, I've taken August off the grid. No TV, no phone, no social media, no email, no news. I don't even
Oh,
watch.
I'm getting a panic attack just thinking of it.
Christina, I'm telling you guys, it is the greatest thing you could possibly do if you want to give your brain a little reset. I remember you once said to me, Christina, we were doing that event at Portland State, and it was right when this all was bubbling up and we were starting to, there were protesters there. They said, you hate women. They said, I hate gays, all the nonsense. And I remember we were flicking through Twitter and you looked at me and you said, I think this thing's frying my brain. And it's like, we all are doing this thing. We have this technology in front of us all the time, and we have no idea how it's affecting us. So I did it sort of just as a lark the first time 3 years ago, but I recommend everyone try it at some level or take the weekend off. Or in chapter 10, I say, take off maybe just from Christmas to New Year's. It's like, that's like a moment in time where nobody's really working. There's an opportunity to like reset before the year starts. And because otherwise, we're staring into this black mirror all the time. We're being slammed with information and misinformation and hate and baby pictures and Nazi imagery. And it's like, I don't know that the human mind is actually set up to deal with this adequately. So I'm doing the best I can to manage that because I kind of want to keep the hair.
Well, let me ask you just quickly, because I know we're running out of time. But how do you think, first of all, how are you surviving this pandemic? How are you doing?
We have to ask about the baby too.
Oh, okay. And also,
yes.
But how do you think this pandemic is having an effect on our political discourse? And what are you noticing in that?
Oh, I do. I think it's having a really, really deep one. So I'll answer the how am I doing? I'm doing pretty well. I mean, I was a little ahead of the curve on the home studio thing. So
yeah, I know, you were way.
You're right. So like I'm watching.
There's a special program on Zoom to make you look better. It's sort of softening. You have it.
I have it here. Well, trust me, it costs a lot more money than Zoom for whatever I've got here.
Man.
But look, I was ahead of the curve on that, and my guys are obviously all working remote, and now David is running everything. So we've had some stresses, and I had to put a satellite on my roof to get the right internet and blah, blah, blah. But my business is doing okay. I just gave all my employees bonuses because they're all working hard. And, I'm just a believer that if you treat people well, they'll treat you well and all that good stuff. So we've got a stock fridge and we're okay. So that's that. We also adopted the day they closed the shelters here in LA. I went and I found this dog, Clyde, who you've seen. He was about to be put down. They had already signed the order and we took him and he's the most gorgeous, wonderful dog ever. So we're doing okay.
He ate your book, right?
He did. He literally ate the first book. We got the shipment of the books and I was in here doing press and I walk out there and I see all the cardboard ripped all over the place. And I look and he bit into the box and literally the top copy of the first box, he ate it. So we're going to auction it off for charity.
They're such critics. They're such
I know. Well, I titled it, Don't Burn This Book, not Don't Chew This Book. So.
What's it like being on book tour during a pandemic? I mean, you were supposed to be, this was going to be, 15 stops, and I was going to be with you in
you were going to be with me in Silver Spring, and hopefully we'll be able to do all that stuff. Look, I was supposed to be in New York this week doing a lot of press and all that stuff. I'm doing it from home right now.
Is it depressing, or is it like for me? I think, thank God, I don't want to go. But you're young and energetic, so you're probably. What? How do you feel about that?
I was looking forward to it, but this has been totally fine. We're living in a weird world right now. And Danielle, to directly answer your question, beyond how I'm doing, I do think that right now we're in a really, really unique time that we're going to look back and a lot of people are going to go, whoa, I didn't do enough during that time. But we have been trapped at home right now to really think about our lives. Do we live in the house we want to live in the community we want to live in? Do you want to commute to work? Do you want to work from home? Are you in love with the person that you're trapped in the house with? Do you like your kids? Should we be so reliant on all the systems, or should you be growing some food in your backyard, which I'm trying to do now? Like all of these things, I think there's such incredible fertile ground for new ideas to burst forth. And I think one of the things that I don't really get frustrated by this stuff anymore, but one of the things that bores me, I guess is a better way to put it, is when I see the same old people fighting about partisan politics all the time. it seems very old world to me now, that there is a new world on the horizon that maybe in a weird or twisted or perverse or perhaps beautiful way, we needed this moment of coronavirus to jog us out of something. And I think there is a chance that on the other side of this, we will think of the world differently and people will go, you know, I really did like being at home and spending more time with my kids, and I don't want that 2-hour commute every day. Or the litany of other things, or I'm working at a job that I just don't love and I better learn something else and try something else.
Also,
I think
there's in Christina's occupation. I mean, colleges are closing down. We're having to reconsider. I think I was just even reading today that, you know, people, the whole cost of college, people are now re-examining, but also that sense of wokeism and micro, you know, aggressions and triggers, that may all seem pretty passé after this too.
I hope so.
People try it, but it doesn't get any traction, you know?
Well,
I see it on Twitter and then it just goes away.
Well, that shows you what a superfluous and in many ways ridiculous argument we've been stuck having, unfortunately, for so long. Because when the shit hits the fan, when we have a worldwide pandemic and we are quite literally trapped in our houses, well, nobody cares whether the guy or gal who comes up with the cure or comes up with an antibody or something, or comes up with a great mask we can all use. Nobody cares if they're a lesbian or black or white or gay or straight.
Oh, except I will say today there was an article.
Yeah, I saw it.
A young woman doesn't want it to be a straight white male at Oxford.
She's very particular.
More fine work from HuffPo.
Yeah. Dave, we hope you can stay for a couple minutes if you haven't finished your wine.
Wait, can I just ask one thing about the baby?
The baby, and then we'll ask you to stay just for a few minutes if you don't mind, because we have our beloved supporters have a couple of questions for you. But
I've got some time.
You were one way in which Jordan influenced you is to start thinking maybe it's kind of important to be a father, and now you want to be a father, and you are serious about this.
There was something about the way you put that the way you ended that word or something.
It's because of the pandemic. We've said over and over how much the heroes after them, the healthcare workers, are parents trapped at home with small children.
Yeah, you know, it's funny you say that.
The baby.
It's funny you say that because my brother and sister my brother has 3 kids. My sister has 2. My sister is now living at my parents' house, actually living in my childhood bedroom. And, you know, everyone's going through all this crazy stuff. And I think they're very jealous of my life right now because I've got me and David and the dog, and we're eating well and we have time to do things, and, you know, and they're dealing with all this craziness. But Jordan did really move me on this, and I'll tell you why. So David's younger than me. He's 31, and he grew up in a time, it's a bit of a generational shift, actually. He grew up in a time where he says to me now, when he was, well, first off, he was telling people that he was bi or gay or whatever when he was 12 or 13. That is beyond something that I could even possibly formulate. And again, it's not like that I'm that old, but as a child of the 80s, that is just not something that would have been functionally thought about or something. And he says, oh, I always grew up knowing I would get married. Even though gay marriage wasn't a thing back then, he was just like, yeah, I'm like gay. It didn't mean anything was broken with you or wrong with you. It was just like, I'm gay, big damn whoop. So in some ways, even though we have a little age gap, we always joke that it's like he matured very fast because he was doing life right because the world allowed him to do it. And I maybe got a little stuck in some of that, so that we're probably right around the same actual spiritual age. But anyway, so he grew up knowing he would want to get married and knowing he would want to have kids. And I put so much energy into my career and everything else that I was doing. And probably a lot of that had to do with, I never saw a life beyond that. I never saw something beyond that I fueled all that, right? Like you think of like great comics, usually they need some real serious pain to fuel it with. And what happens, unfortunately, is if you don't own that pain, eventually it destroys you, which is why so many great artists and musicians and everything else die of drug overdoses and the rest of it. But anyway, he wanted kids. And then I was on tour with Jordan. And one of the things that Jordan would talk about often in the talks, he would say that most people, to live a fully actualized, complete life, need to have children. That it is such a fundamental part of the human experience of bringing a child into the world, trying to model something decent for them, that that most people need it. He would always qualify it, by the way, by saying, not everybody. There are some real outlier cases that can live fully validated, full lives without kids, but most people do. So here I've got David saying he wants kids, and I've got Jordan saying most people need it. And finally, one night I was listening to Jordan, we were in Australia, and I was just like, I don't think I'm the exception to the rule. And if I am the exception to the rule, what right would I have to tell the person who I love, I'm going to be the one to deny you something that you want? What would that say about me? So yes, we are in the process, and you'll love this part. So we donated sperm, or not donated, we deposited sperm just as coronavirus started. So just as the city is locking down, we go to the sperm bank. They were still open. I'm walking into the sperm bank, and who's standing outside but Dennis Rodman? I don't know what the hell he was doing there, but I thought I will always remember this. I am going to donate sperm right now. It's the pandemic. Nobody's outside, but here's Dennis Rodman standing here with a skateboard.
It's a Fellini movie.
No, it's like Woody Allen would like have a field day with it. But in any event, we found out that our boys swim, so we're good to go. So we're going to use one of each of our, we're going to take one of each of our sperm, and we're going to get one egg donor, and the goal is to have twins, but there's, a lot of this, you got to kind of hope that it all works out right. We've got the surrogate. We're working on the egg. So if either one of you ladies have an old egg socked away.
You have a surrogate already?
We've got the surrogate.
You go to an agency, or do you go on Craigslist, or
yeah. There are more agencies than you can possibly imagine. And you can literally, I haven't online dated because it's been a while, but you just swipe past people. You just look at these girls and, oh, she's got nice eyes, but her butt's too big, or she's too tall, she's too short. This one has this genetic disease, this one, that. And,
this doesn't freak you out a bit? Speaking of technology and how it's
changed. No, it's a little freaky. It's a little, I guess it's weird. Science is weird. Doing things that feel different are weird. But, let's not forget that within our lifetimes, there's going to be artificial wombs. Women won't even have to be pregnant anymore because we'll be able to do that artificially. We can now clone animals that can live full lives. I mean, the fact that we can do it to animals is pretty much evidence that there probably are cloned humans on Earth right now, because if we can do it to animals, there's a moral component to doing it to humans. But I have no doubt where technology exists, there are scientists that use it. So it is sort of a brave new world right now.
Well, I wish I could offer to be the surrogate mother. Obviously, I'm too old, but I loved being pregnant. I would have been, and someone that wanted a baby that couldn't have it, I would have. I think I could have done that when I was younger, because I just didn't. I loved the whole thing. Although maybe once you have it, I think if someone else. It's psychological, and it's like many kids who are adopted, their adopted parents are their adopted parents. I mean, they have weird feelings about who's the original, and in this case, it'll be one of yours. So the whole thing is perfect. I hope it works out for you, because I think you'll be a great father.
That was the first thing when I told. So Jordan was the first person that I told that we had made the decision, and that was the exact thing he said to me. He said, I know you'll make a great father. And it's weird. It's not something I ever thought about. It's weird. It's weird for me to even talk about right now, because it hasn't even happened yet. So it feels a little odd or something. But I promise you and the world and myself that I will do the best that I can. I guess that's what most people probably do when they go into these things. But to do all of this in the midst of coronavirus, where the whole world feels like, are we ever going to have the world back? It does feel particularly weird to me. It's like, what if the world, I think a lot of people are thinking this, we're not really talking about it, but it's like, what if the old world never
comes back?
I think that's something that we have to think about. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be trapped in our houses forever, but what if parts of the country, just don't ever return, or who knows?
I think we're in 1940. I was thinking that today, that we are just at the beginning of, I don't mean a war, but we are
world transformative
historical transformation, because it isn't going away. It's not going away in 3 months. It's not going away in 6 months.
And by the way, that's why I think that the whole intellectual dark web thing, to get back to that for just a sec, I think that's why it worked, because we were trying to grapple with all of this. Like, what is happening in a changing world? Now, it's not that we were predicting coronavirus, But what do we need right now more than anything else? Like in this weird, wacky time, it's like we need some sense makers right now. And there aren't many that come out of politics or out of cable news or anywhere else. And I think the few people that you can kind of identify and go, oh, they're roughly trying to say something true amidst the craziness, I think that has a lot of value. I don't know how I became one of those people. I don't think I think I just started saying what I think. And that really is the point of the book. That was it. It's not that I'm some genius or some superhero. I just started saying what I think. And somehow people were like, oh, maybe I should do that. That seems kind of right.
I'm going to make one recommendation for truth about the virus. I talk about this incessantly, but it's my favorite podcast next to ours called TWIV, This Week in Viruses. And it's for virologists in real time. Virologists, doctors, emergency room, everybody, people that are on the front line trying to figure it out, trying to cure it. And it's like state-of-the-art information. And then they change. I mean, now they've changed about whether ventilators are good to have at all, because they're in many cases killing people. The thing is to avoid them at all costs. Anyway, This Week in Viruses.
Are you guys ever worried that spending too much time thinking about all of that stuff, or listening to podcasts about it, or listening to experts about it, that almost perpetuates the feeling that it'll never go away? I've really tried to not have too many guests just focusing on it, because I feel like that sort of feeds it constantly
I'm
in a way.
actually, it's not so much that, because I agree with you, and I'm finding the politics around it right now just so upsetting. But no, what I've been thinking is, it's not just dealing, and we'll get a vaccination presumably and that, but the impact, not just on our economy, but other economies, on the food chains, on how this is going to change. And we're looking at the unemployment that's coming up. Just how.
And then cascading catastrophes.
The cascading effect on other cultures, and dealing with what we were dealing with, the climate change and migrants. And I feel like we're just in a boiling cauldron at the moment, and we just have no idea what's going to come out of it. And there could be great things too, these innovations that also come with pandemics and climate change.
And that's what I'm hopeful for. I mean, there are voices on Twitter over the last couple of weeks that I've really come to like, and there are some voices on Twitter that feel very old world to me. And I think that that's what we all have to sort of map. Like, are there people who are thinking about this in a new way, versus people that, I don't mean that they're bad people, but that can't think of like a new dynamic, that can't think of a new paradigm to solve some of these problems. But I think I've decided, more importantly than anything else, since both of you think this thing's not going away, Christina, I'm going to send you a case of Chardonnay. Is that your white of choice?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think I prefer Prosecco, but you don't have to do that.
I'm going to send you a case of something. And Danielle, I guess you want a case of milk, or what can we do here?
Yeah.
I'm full Mormon at the moment. Fine. It's our pleasure. We should be sending you, I know what we should send you is like salt and straw ice cream, which is something I discovered in Los Angeles, and our family is obsessed with it. So
I would gladly have some salt and straw. Their shop isn't too far from here. Right. And, I'm not Nancy Pelosi. I don't have two $24,000 freezers stocked with ice cream, unfortunately.
Well, this would be worth it.
I bet you have a fancy freezer.
They'll ship across country. So it's amazing. But anyway, David, stay with us for a second. Yep. And thank you so much. And
buy this book.
But don't burn it. Don't
burn it.
But if you're going to burn it, tweet it, please, because I'll retweet you.
Well, or
my book was burned.
Buy it, then burn it. That's
okay.
right.
As long as you buy it.